Chair of the Environment Committee, and I'll call the committee to order. A few things on our agenda today. First one being calling to order, second being the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Move approval.
I'll second that.
All in favor say yes, or say aye.
Aye.
All right. Opposed say nay. Okay, that's carried. Controversial one. Approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from September 24th?
Move approval.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed nay. Carries. That takes us to three items on our consent agenda. First one is the City of Lake Elmo 2040 comp plan and comprehensive sewer plan. City of Hugo comp plan and sewer plan, and finally City of Columbus comp plan and sewer plan. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move approval.
I'll second that.
All right, we're on a roll. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed nay. Carries. That takes us to our non-consent business agenda, which the first one is an intergovernmental agreement with Hennepin County. Mr. Remus, welcome.
How are you doing?
Fantastic.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Chris Remus. I'm an assistant manager in Interceptor Engineering. And today I'd like to present on business item 2019-277 as introduced by the chair. So project background, this would be a cooperative agreement with Hennepin County for the Tanager Bridge Replacement Project within the city of Orono on CASA 15 County State 8 Highway. The bridge, which they identify as Tanager Bridge, is in poor condition, is currently load restricted, and larger trucks need to detour around said bridge, and enforcement of overweight vehicles is currently in place. Hennepin County is currently working on design plans to replace the bridge starting in 2020 and anticipating completion in 2021. The existing Met Council interceptor will need to be relocated as it's shown in the bottom right corner. The solid green line is the existing force main that is currently under the channel. In the dashed white rectangle is the new bridge location. So the proposed bridge is going to impact our active force main. So what is being proposed is the dashed green line, which would move facilities and structures further to the west to maintain conveyance of sewage. And this work would need to be done prior to the county commencing on their work. And that equates to about 1,200 lineal feet of pipe and several structures. So the general terms of the agreements that we're going to discuss with Hennepin County is that Hennepin County is designing and procuring the construction contract. They would also administer the contract and inspection of the work, and they will acquire all right-of-way and easements, including a new easement for the relocated Met Council force main further to the west. MCES would be responsible for design of the force main replacement, which is currently underway and will be finalized upon final bridge design plans. We would also have construction efforts to inspect the force main work, and Met Council would acquire applicable permits for the force main work.
Mr. Remus, I'm showing my ignorance here, but what's the rationale for replacing a force main if a bridge is going over it?
Mr. Chair, the current plans that we've seen is they'll have bridge piling for the bridge abutments, and they would be driven within very close proximity that would pose a risk to the stability and integrity of our force main where it is. So we feel it's too great a risk to remain in place and survive bridge work.
Seems smart. Thank you.
So the proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorizes its regional administrator to negotiate and execute an intergovernmental agreement with Hennepin County for the construction of a 1,200-foot segment of force main within MCES Interceptor 7113 as part of the county's Tanager Bridge replacement. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any further questions? Please.
Just, thank you, Chair. Mr. Remus, I just was going to ask if you know about the bridge, like what type of bridge it's going to be, what the construction is, and is it similar with the one that's being replaced?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, at this point, I don't know exactly what that would be. They're still finalizing and kind of looking at several alternatives, so I don't know what the new bridge would be at this point.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? We have a motion.
Move approval.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members.
That takes us to our second item on the non-consent business agenda, which is Brooklyn Park and Champlain Interceptor renewal for Phase 1, Part 2. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Tim Wadeen. I'm the another assistant manager for the Interceptor Engineering, here to present on business item 2019-278. So the project itself is located in Brooklyn Park, as you see on the map, right along the west side of the Mississippi River, and is composed of 2 different sites. The southern site is on Mississippi Lane, which includes replacing an existing 60-inch pipe with a 72-inch pipe, an existing road. The second site is on Riverview Lane to the north. You can see it in the red there. It's a cured-in-place pipe process that we'll be using there to line a 60-inch and 66-inch pipe there. Manholes in both of these locations are also going to be replaced with new manholes to take care of the deterioration that has occurred at these structures due to hydrogen sulfide. And both sites are also going to include removal of private connections to our interceptor service or interceptor sewer, and construction of a local sanitary sewer where these connections will be remade, and then the sanitary sewer, the connection from the private residences to that city sewer will be through a lift station that will connect back to our system. So the local sewer pipe and the larger city lift station will be installed as a part of the project, and then the city is going to take ownership of those facilities once the project is complete. Just a little view of what it is that we're going to be looking at as far as construction in the area. The left-hand side with the Riverview Lane photo shows the CIPP installation. We'll again be using or installing cured-in-place pipe through the existing manholes. So there'll be some impact to the area, but fairly limited. Where we are upsizing our facilities from a 60-inch pipe to a 72-inch pipe, we'll be actually excavating in that area, and so we will have more of an open cut method, a traditional open cut method that we'll be using, such as on the right-hand side. The bottom picture there kind of shows an idea of what it is that we'll be doing for manhole rehabilitation. There'll be new manholes that we'll be installing, and especially the new 72-inch pipe or the 72-inch line. We do have some trail and some park impacts that will be affecting or be a part of the project. So the West River Road Trail will be installing temporary conveyance along that trail. We've been talking with the city of Brooklyn Park as well as Three Rivers Park District about this trail. We'll be closing it for about 18 months as we'll be installing the temporary conveyance along the surface there, running that through the duration of the project. We'll also be using a portion of Jewel Park as a staging area on the north-hand side or the northern side of the facility. So there'll be a pumping station and some equipment that will be staged in that area. But the playground, the park building, and a lot of the parking lot is still going to remain open to the public. Our bids were received. The engineer's estimate was for $2,072,000. We received three bids ranging from $19,892,251.85 to $22,957,308.70. There was a disadvantaged business participation goal on this project. The minority business enterprise goal was 8%. The women-owned business enterprise goal was also 8%. SM Henches and Sons Incorporated was the low responsive bid of $19,892,251.85. The Office of Equal Opportunity reviewed their proposal and found that they had met the good faith effort toward disadvantaged business participation goals. So our proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize its regional administrator to award and execute a construction contract for Brooklyn Park and Champlain Interceptor Renewal Phase 1, Part 2, MCES project numbers 809311, 809315, and 809089, contract number 19P143 with SM Henches and Sons Incorporated for their low responsible bid of $19,892,251.85. With that, I'd be willing to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know now we don't typically allow connections directly to the interceptors. Were those something we inherited when we took over the system, or how did they end up that way?
Council member, or Chairman Lindstrom, our committee members, this facility was originally part of the Northern Sanitary Sewer District, which was constructed by, or this portion was constructed by the city of Brooklyn Park. So at that point in time, when it was constructed, it was owned by the city of Brooklyn Park and was, that was just part of how they constructed their facilities, was to connect them directly to that interceptor. When we inherited the interceptor and we acquired the interceptor from the city of Brooklyn Park and the Northern Sanitary Sewer District, we also received the direct connections to our interceptor pipe.
Thank you.
Great. I have a question. I think I know the answer to the goals for minority business enterprises, women business enterprises, 8%. And as you noted, they made a good faith effort to meet those goals.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean that that does not mean that they did meet those goals? That means that they tried to meet those goals, and our office agreed that they made a good faith effort to meet those goals. Am I understanding that correctly?
Chairman Lindstrom, you are correct.
They may or may not have met those goals.
They made a good faith effort to meet those goals, but it is my understanding that they did not meet either the 8% minority or 8% women-owned business enterprises goals.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second?
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That takes us to our final item on our non-consent agenda, which is ratification of declaration of emergency for repair of Interceptor 1MN-320 under Van Wyck Boulevard in Minneapolis. Hello, Mr. Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. So tonight I'm going to present this emergency declaration. But first I want to take a quick review, like we did last time, of the emergency declaration process. When we have an emergency declaration, it's the process that we go through is to identify, investigate the infrastructure of the concern. Determination is made by carrying out a competitive bidding process as prescribed in the council's procurement policy would be unacceptable and delay commencement of work to repair the facility. So we determine, is this a safety hazard or a big issue, and or can we go through a normal procurement process? Uh, Emergency declaration document is prepared and signed by the General Manager of Environmental Services. And after review, the emergency declaration is authorized by the regional administrator, who has delegated authority pursuant to council's procurement policy. And then the contractor is selected and work begins under direction of the council's authorized representative. And that is the council, that we proceed forward immediately. In this case, there's an emergency, so it makes sense to proceed immediately. Emergency declaration is ratified by the Metropolitan Council if the cost is correct. The emergency exceeds $100,000. Or the cost to correct the emergency exceeds $100,000. So tonight we're going to talk about an area where we identified a pipe which is, I'll call it, in the process of collapsing. The location is near downtown Minneapolis, just west of 94 by about 4 blocks, and it's 1 block north of 394 in the Harrison neighborhood. So you probably recognize this area. Many of us travel past it at least once a day, pretty close to downtown Minneapolis. The pipe itself, 1MN320, is a 7-foot wide by 7-foot tall arch-shaped tunnel, and it was constructed of brick and this is the one that deserves oohs and ahs. It was constructed in 1894.
Wow.
Actually saw some pictures of the original construction of this pipe, and it was quite fascinating watching or seeing pictures of horses dredging out the trench. A lot of soft cap workmen carefully masonry brick building this interceptor. So the issue at hand is MCS has been actively sewer cleaning in the area, and an active sewer cleaning project in Minneapolis. Much the east-west portion of this interceptor between Van Wyck Boulevard and DuPont has been noted in the past as being slightly deformed. It's heart-shaped, and for lack of visuals here, an arch-shaped tunnel, if it's heart-shaped, the crown has come down a little bit, so it starts to form a little bit of a shape of a crown. In August, the location was surveyed, and cleaning was noted to be difficult as they approached this area because there was so much debris in the pipe, and it couldn't be removed as the crews approached Van Wyck, so they were unsuccessful in cleaning out the pipe. So they went back and they re-inspected on October 1st and discovered that the crown had actually sunk. So the top of the pipe had actually moved in the duration they were working in the area. So between August 19th, where this first picture was taken on the left, and October 1st, you can see the very top of the brick layer, you can see actually more soil above is exposed. And it's not very much, but it's, of course, a large tunnel, and any movement at all would be some concern. So when the field staff noted that the crown had moved, and it was right underneath the roadway of Van Wyck Boulevard, they contacted the city, and the city immediately closed the roadway. And subsequent inspection has shown that the immediate area beneath Van Wyck Boulevard, about 80 feet of the 300 feet originally noted, was failing. And you can see in this picture is more shots of the parts of the crown of the pipe or the top of the pipe that have in the past moved and now is looking a little bit more treacherous. It's kind of hard to see exactly what's going on in these pictures, but this is actually, I'll use my hands again, what we call the hinge points of the pipe, where at the 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock position, the pipe is actually split away and it's just hanging basically over the invert of the pipe. Also noted in the area, there's a lot of heavy debris. So they have about 40 inches of brick and sand and other material that's in the bottom of the pipe. So that's kind of significant. Um, and they've tried to work their way through it, but like I said, they haven't been able to clean out this particular section, and now they feel that it's fairly dangerous to even work in it with the top of the pipe moving. So the scope and estimate, the scope will include engineering services to support the repair work, repair of the 1M320 pipe through open cut excavation. So we plan on open cutting down to the top of the pipe and actually placing a section of pipe inside the pipe, inside the tunnel, and then grouting the ends. The traffic control is been instituted. Unfortunately, this section was closed, was actually already an active detour for the Glenwood Boulevard closure in Minneapolis, so we've had to reroute traffic once again. We're setting up a temporary wastewater conveyance system this week, and we'll have surface restoration, quite a bit of project communications because we are on the detour route, and our total estimated cost is approximately $1 million. And we're expecting that the pipe and the restoration of the roadway will be accomplished. There might be some side boulevard work for restoration that will continue on, depending on how quickly winter advances on us. We might be finishing that work in the spring, but the actual reopening of the Van White Boulevard, we're hoping, will be between 4 to 6 weeks. So our proposed action tonight is that the Metropolitan Council ratify the justification for the declaration of emergency for repair of the interceptor 1MN320 under Van White Boulevard, Minneapolis, attached to the business item. And of course, the business item, the final page of it includes the emergency declaration. So with that, I'll be free to take any questions.
Questions?
Move approval?
Motion's been made.
I'll second that.
Before we vote on that, I just have a question or two. The procurement process, the selection of a contractor when it's in an emergency, how is that made?
At this point, what we usually default to is looking at who our pre-qualified contractors are for sewer work. And amongst those, understanding how busy they were and how quickly they could be mobilized, made a selection of one in particular that we knew could mobilize right away. So it's pretty much just a verbal communication, a comparison of notes between the project managers to find out who's busy and who isn't busy.
Yep. You get on the phone, you have a group of contractors you've probably worked with in the past that actually are pre-qualified. They go through some sort of pre-qualification process.
And for 2019, we did have a list of pre-qualified contractors for open pipe work.
Great. Very good. There's been a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
And it's amazing to think about this project was done in 1894. And it will be great to think that in 120 years, 130 years, the work that's being done by all you folks today, someone will look back and say, this project was last done in 2019, you know? It'd be great to think like the quality of construction is as good today as it was in 1894 when they had horses and soft caps to do the job.
Maybe even longer.
Maybe even we can shoot for the stars. 130 years that's not long enough.
We have a lot of better materials now than bricks and mortar.
I'll hold you to that. All right, sounds good. That takes us to the information part of our agenda where we're going to hear more about industrial waste and pollution prevention. Welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Chair and committee members, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to show you some of the details of our industrial waste and pollution prevention section. You might not be aware that there is a regulatory arm of Metropolitan Council when it comes to industrial discharges. And I wanted to let you know where that comes from and how we are going about regulating our industries that discharge to our system. Our requirements and our authority for regulating the discharges to our systems come originally from the Clean Water Act and from the National Pretreatment Program. That was, easier to see it here. That was passed into the Federal Register Part 403 back in 1972. The National Pretreatment Program includes categorical standards for different categories of industries so that each industry that has similar processes throughout the country has the same limits to meet. There's also general pretreatment regulations that all the industries will have to meet. This is a program that is delegated down through the states into the local pretreatment programs, to local wastewater treatment plants. For us, we're in Region 5 of EPA, which is housed out of Chicago, Illinois. That's delegated to Minnesota through the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and they approved our program in 1982 for regulating our industries. Our program includes a set of waste discharge rules and a set of local limits that are technically derived that will protect the treatment plants so that we are not violating any of the water quality standards, effluent limits, or any controls that we have on our solids disposal. So the industrial waste section has a number of purposes. One, we're administering the EPA-approved pretreatment program. We have 9 wastewater treatment plants. The whole reason for this, for the National Pretreatment Program, is to protect these different treatment plants and the waters that they discharge into. So we're protecting our 9 wastewater treatment plants and our interceptor system, and the 4 major rivers here that they discharge to. We're also protecting the health and safety of our workers at the treatment plants, our workers in the interceptors, but also the city workers that are in the city sewer lines, and of course the general public that have these lines go past their houses and under their feet on the streets. Of course, we're supporting the MCS mission, vision, and values. One of the most important things we do is provide a level playing field. We're generally environmental engineers, environmental scientists. We come at it from an environmental viewpoint, but we don't lose track of the fact that we are representing the Metropolitan Council, and it's not just the environmental health of the region that we have to protect, but the economic health as well. So we want to make sure that a company that wants to be a good environmental citizen of the region doesn't have to compete with a company that is bypassing the rules, so that they don't feel pressure to do that themselves. Our customers and stakeholders are of course the people in the region, 2.6 million people who are living here in our sewered areas. We have almost 900 active permits right now with industries, with groundwater remediation sites, with liquid waste haulers. One thing I did when I took over as manager 5 years ago is every one of these industries submits a self-monitoring report to us every year. And on that, they list how many employees they have. And we use that for any number of things, determining how much domestic waste they had. But I thought it would be interesting to add up all those and see how many employees were directly affected by our regulation. And it turned out to be almost 180,000 that are directly employed by by companies that we're regulating. It's a pretty awesome responsibility when you consider that. We have 226 industrial users that are considered significant industrial users. That is a designation that is defined by the EPA, by the US EPA. And for those, they have special conditions, both for the company and for us. They have to have a spill control plan on file with us. They have to do a baseline monitor report. They have to report to us at least twice a year. For us, we need to, for the Met Council and the industrial waste section, we need to inspect them at least yearly. We need to monitor them at least yearly. Their permits can be no longer than 5 years in duration, and ours are 3 years in duration. Of course, we have 110 communities that are directly connected to our system. One thing I wanted to point out is that you may be aware that we just did a customer survey this last fall, and Environmental Services contacted all of our customers, the industrial customers, the communities that we serve, and the watershed districts. Among those, the industrial customers rated us as 88% approval. And that includes companies that we've taken enforcement actions against. And we're very proud of the fact that even the companies that we have issued notices of violation or taken advanced enforcement with, they understood the reasons for the enforcement. They found our employees to be very professional, very knowledgeable. They understood what they needed to do to get back into good graces and into compliance. And they had especially good things to say about us on the survey.
Mr. Chair,
Please.
before you go away from that,
Sure.
The groundwater discharge permit, what kind of process is that?
Back in 1988, we were asked by the PCA to start accepting contaminated groundwater into our system. They were starting to clean up some of these sites that had been historically contaminated, and they were pumping the groundwater, putting it through a system to treat it, and discharging to us. We traditionally had not been accepting groundwater because we considered it a clean water source. So we passed the contaminated groundwater and leachate program back then with special requirements on most of those would be volatile organics, benzene, ethylene, toluene. A lot of them were from gas stations that had leaking underground storage tanks. Some were from industrial sites. So what those are is they operate generally continuously for a period of however long it takes for the groundwater to be clean. It could be 5 years, it could be 25 years. And they treat it and discharge to us. They report quarterly. Instead of paying upfront SAC sewer availability charge to us, they pay a temporary capacity charge because they're using our capacity, but they don't need it forever. So they've been steady customers of ours since 1988.
Okay, thank you.
And when you say they, who's they again?
The responsible parties are normally the property owners on that. There are some where the PCA has taken over as the responsible party. Generally, it is the property owner, or sometimes it can be a previous property owner if they've been found to be responsible for that.
Thank you.
The way that we control these discharges is we issue permits to them. Our most common permit is the standard discharge permit, and those go out to manufacturing industries that have some sort of a continuous discharge that's coming to us. Those are all of a 3-year duration permit. You can see it. We have yearly permit fees for that. The permit fees we get from all of our permittees pay for all of our direct program costs for the industrial waste section. We've been ramping that up until it got to that point, and I think we've just reached that point. So we're not having the large increases in the permit fees like we've had for the last several years. These companies all have to report to us either annually, semi-annually, or quarterly. The reports include a requirement for them to do sampling of their own wastewater. They would hire a consultant in a lab to come in and sample their wastewater, and the permit will include a list of which contaminants they have to include in their analysis. It also has some special conditions in there as far as reporting spills, conditions about how they have to reapply for the permit, pay any of the invoices that they get from us. A lot of those will also have strength charges. If they are discharging a waste that's stronger than the normal domestic waste, both in chemical oxygen demand and total suspended solids, it costs us more to treat it. So the industries are charged a surcharge for those higher strength wastes based on their sample results. The ones that that are categorized as significant industrial users, those can either be over 25,000 gallons a day of industrial waste or subject to the EPA categorical standards that I mentioned at the first. They have to meet the metal finishing standards or the battery manufacturing or pharmaceutical standards that every similar industry in the country has to meet. Besides issuing these permits, I told you that the companies have to do their own monitoring and send them to us. We also do our own sampling of them as a double check of that. We generally go out unannounced to the companies. We do a 3-day sampling, which would be like a Tuesday through Friday. That's 3 full days when we get there. For significant industrial users, we're required to do that once a year. And like I said, unannounced for 3 days. The non-significant ones, I should mention we're only required to permit our significant industrial users by the federal statutes. We choose to permit more than that for a couple of reasons. Some can have an impact on our system as far as metals or corrosion or plugging of the sewers. A number of them are also high strength users, and we charge them a strength charge for that. And that helps us keep better control of our system. So our non-SIUs, we try and get out once a permit period, so that's every 3 years to those. We do sampling because of enforcement actions. If we've taken enforcement actions and they've claimed compliance, we'll often go out and do a double check to confirm that they are now in compliance. Sometimes that enforcement sampling will be because we've had a complaint from an employee at the company or a neighbor or someone who knows something and saw something or suspects something. We'll often do enforcement sampling, in which case we often do not tell the company that we're sampling. We'll find a downstream point and even go there in the middle of the night to set up so they don't see us. So we've had a number of those in the past. We do special sampling in the collection system or at the treatment plants if any problems have arisen. We do sampling in response to spills, and we also have liquid waste receiving facilities where people truck in waste to us, and we do random sampling at that.
Have we noted any difference between the samples that are sent to us and the ones where we collect them unannounced in terms of compliance?
Yes, we do. I wouldn't say we always do, but there are definitely cases where we do, and sometimes it's intentional on a part of a company. We come out there and catch them unannounced, and they're running a process they normally wouldn't run when we're out there. Oftentimes it's unintentional. Sometimes they aren't sampling properly as far as their permit was set up, and we'll find out that they weren't compositing their samples right. They weren't stirring it like they were supposed to or something, and so our results will be different. So then we have to go out there, inspect the company, work through their procedures and our procedures, and find out, is this something where we suspect that they're changing the processes because we're there, or are they doing something wrong in their sampling? And we address that at that time.
Thank you.
We also have the general discharge permits. There are a number of companies that have a very similar discharge that a standard discharge permit might not be appropriate for. Microbreweries is a very a good example of that. We used to have one or occasionally two or up to three large breweries in the region, and they had a very large effect on our system. They'd be discharging 1 million gallons of very high strength waste, and they had a standard permit, and they could afford to do the sampling, and they'd pay us a large strength charge. What happened is those went away, and now we have all these tiny little point sources, all these craft breweries out there. And together, they still have a large impact on us. But we can't issue them a standard discharge permit. What would end up happening is they would be paying $500, $1,000 to do the sampling to determine that they owe us $200 in strength charge. And so that was going to be administratively burdensome on this important industry here. So what we did is we developed a production-based strength charge. So depending upon how many barrels of beer they brew, they would pay us. I believe it's 72 cents per barrel of beer that they brew right now, and that's we use the sampling that we did at the larger breweries to determine that, and so those facilities have general discharge permits. They're not required to sample. They have best management practices that they have to follow, and they have much smaller permit fees. Hospitals is another good example of that because the sampling that we were doing there wasn't telling us what we needed to know. We were sampling for metals and mercury and chemical action demand, and really the concerns now are more pharmaceuticals. The mercury has, in a large part, gone away at the hospitals, not completely, but pharmaceutical sampling would be tremendously expensive, and you really have to know which pharmaceutical you're looking for there. We weren't getting those results there, and our technicians and the industries didn't like sampling this water that was potentially infected because who knows what kind of diseases are being passed through that water. So we issued them general discharge permits as well. One, I should point out the zero discharge categorical permits as well. We have 21 of those. If a company is meeting its federal categorical standards by not discharging at all, we were taking them off from permit because they didn't have any discharge with us. But we still had a responsibility to make sure that they continued to not discharge to us and that they were meeting the standards. So we developed this general discharge permit, and it's unusual. They get a permit for not discharging. But with that permit, they recognize that they do have this federal categorical process that they need to be in compliance with. They certify every year. Yes, we still have the processes that you think we have. We still have zero discharge. That's a 5-year permit, and we go out and inspect them every 5 years when we renew the permits. Some of the results we've had, this just shows the effect of our dental mercury program, where we've gone out to the dentist starting in 2003. We collaborated with the Minnesota Dental Association and with the dentists in the area. And the amalgam in your teeth is a major source of mercury to our treatment plants. When they start filling and removing that amalgam, we collaborated with them so that they would all put in separators to take that amalgam out at the chair side at the dentist. And the mercury at our Metro treatment plant dropped by 67% by doing that, which was a huge result. Between 2003 and 2018. That is now, last year it was passed into law federally that all the dentists in the country are now going to have to meet that. But we were way ahead of the game on that, so we're in good shape on that. What I should note is that we've had a similar success with all metals, basically, all heavy metals. Since our program started in 1982, we've reduced the heavy metals to our treatment plants by 95%. by going out there and regulating what's coming to us. And that's important because when metals come to us, they either are going to go out in our wastewater discharge or in our sludge. We can't treat and turn metals into something else. So now that we want to start making use of our wastewater, our effluent, and making use of our ash in a beneficial manner, it's important that we've taken all those metals out. Otherwise, it wouldn't be possible at all. So that's helping us meet all of our limits, and it's giving us a potential for beneficial use in the future. We do take enforcement activities. We often work with either the counties, the MPCA, or the EPA Criminal Investigation Division. They have a representative here in town that we've worked well with. And we have an enforcement response plan that has escalating enforcement as the violations become more severe and drag on. And you can see they start with a compliance issue notification, just very informal notice of violation, really starts the whole process moving, and has just a small administrative recovery fee on that and what it costs us to issue that. And then they can get a compliance schedule in their permit. And then they start moving up to things like a stipulation agreement, where we would negotiate an agreement with them that we agree not to take civil or criminal action against them, and they pay us monthly penalties and agree to install treatment to come into compliance. We can also do an order to appear, and at that point, their permit is in danger, and they're coming in to say, this is why you shouldn't terminate our permit right now. These are the actions we're taking. We do generate quite a bit of revenue through the industrial waste system. We generate about $15 million a year through industrial waste. I believe about 10 or 11 million of that is through our strength charge system. We also have load charges, where we charge the liquid waste haulers that bring waste into our system, from pumping septic tanks, pumping tanks out at different facilities, hauling fats, oil, and grease from restaurant interceptors or something. They get charged a load charge and a strength charge. Our permit fees that pay for our direct program costs. We also generate the service availability charge determination, and just in the last year we've developed the industrial capacity charge, and that allows the companies to pay as they go for the reserve capacity. So instead of having to pay this large amount up front, they can more like rent it as they need it, and it can better fit their business cycles. And they have the option to do either, so it gives them some flexibilities. We have NOV fees for cost recovery. If they've damaged our system, if we can recover those costs, and of course the stipulation agreement payments. Quickly, I wanted to mention that we have these 4 liquid waste receiving sites, and that's where the haulers that are bringing waste into our system discharge. Most of those are at treatment plants at Metro, Blue Lake, or Empire. We also take a little bit at Seneca, but that's not a very important destination for us. Fridley, we also have a receiving station, but that's not at a treatment plant, so that does come through our interceptors and eventually down to Metro. Currently, some of the things we're working on, you may have heard of the Industrial Pretreatment Incentive Program, where we are providing basically a low-interest loan to companies so that they can install equipment to reduce the strength of the waste that they give us. That was so that we could delay expansion of our treatment plants. So that's a win for us by delaying that. For the company, they end up reducing their strength charges by a tremendous amount, or eliminating them. Some of them are paying us over $1 million a year in strength charges. The industrial SAC and ICC, that just went live this year. I just mentioned that. The microbrewery general permits, those are expanding all the time as new ones are coming online. We have an online reporting system for the self-reports that the companies have to turn into us, and we were the first ones and the first city in the nation that had an electronic reporting system for these types of reports. EPA had some very strict requirements for what you had to do to accept those, and we were the first ones to meet that, and that's been a big benefit to both our customers, and now we're starting to see the results for us as far as um, making our program run easier. We've recently acquired the Rogers wastewater treatment plant, and there are a couple of industries out there that we're permitting. We're looking at chloride and our acceptance policy for that. A lot of the issues that we're dealing with now are with plugging of our interceptors or damages to the interceptors that could be happening from the companies. And with that, we're not only trying to stop the discharges, but doing a lot of cost recovery for cleaning those interceptors. And we do our local limit study every 5 years to determine what the limits are to discharge to our system, depending upon what we can discharge to the rivers and our sludge. And that is due again in September of 2021. And with that, I would welcome any questions you may have.
I didn't see ethanol on that list. Are we still accepting items from ethanol plants?
Mr. Chair, we theoretically would accept ethanol discharges. I don't believe we have any active right now. We were receiving some from out of state where the local treatment plant wasn't large enough, and it was being hauled to us. With those, it was just getting too expensive for them to haul it to us, I believe. So I may be wrong, but I believe we don't have any ethanol discharges at this time.
Great. Question about the permits that are terminated. Roughly how many are terminated on an annual basis?
Mr. Chair, I only have a feeling for it. I don't have an actual number. I would say that probably 10 to 20 permits a year end up being terminated. Some of those are for companies that have removed their process or moved out. Some are ones that through water conservation or some other process have just become so insignificant that we don't need to permit them anymore.
How many are terminated because of bad behavior?
Very few are terminated because of bad behavior. Over the years, it's been, I think it's in the neighborhood of 10 to 15 in the whole history of since 1982 when the program started. We have a pretty good record of working with the companies when they get into noncompliance. There have been instances where officers of companies have actually gone to jail. Even those companies are, I know that there's at least one of those that's one of our model companies now that we took very severe enforcement actions with in the 90s. And now we're considering featuring them in a newsletter because they've turned their act around so well.
They got the message.
They got the message, yeah.
How about do you feel like you're fully staffed? Because one of the things I'm worried about, it's something that you read about in the paper is that companies get away with bad behavior, and you learn later that there's one person who's inspecting, 1,000 companies or some crazy number like that.
Right.
Do you feel like you have the adequate amount of staff that they have the right workload to get the job done?
Well, as a manager, I'd always like more staff, but I think we're in pretty good shape. on that. Um, most of our permit engineers are handling in the neighborhood of 80 to 90 permits. Of that, I would say 25 of those would be significant industrial permits. So we have, especially with the very significant permits that we have a very professional staff. They're generally professional engineers that are working with the companies, and we have very good staff retention. So we have engineers that have often worked with the same company for 10, 15, maybe 30 years, and developed a good relationship with them. And I think we're in pretty good shape there. There's always a challenge of trying to locate other companies that we may have missed somehow that haven't reported to us that they are out there. We have a pretty good system for catching that, but before you develop that relationship, that's it's where the challenge is. We're trying to issue a lot of new permits right now. Uh, the industrial capacity charge program kind of pushed us in that direction, and that to qualify for that program, the company has to be on permit. And so some of the smaller companies that we weren't permitting before, we are starting to permit now, so that they won't have to pay all their SAC. They can pay as the industrial capacity charge. And so we're trying to issue a lot of permits right now on that. At the same time that we've just made electronic reporting mandatory, so we're signing up all the companies there. So the staff is a little stressed on that, but I don't think that we're lacking as far as coverage of the area.
Great, thank you. Other questions? Please.
I was just wondering if you have a program with herbicide, pesticide, and fertilizer companies with discharge and keeping it out of the water and that type of thing.
Yes, Mr. Chair and council members, the pesticides is a federal category. So the pesticide manufacturing, they have to meet a specific limit for. Pesticide formulating, actually packaging and formulating, is a zero discharge category. As far as pesticides that would be used on, like out in the environment and such, generally those are not connected to us. They would be going to the storm sewer, so we're not seeing a lot of that. But any company that is either manufacturing or formulating pesticide is required to be permitted because they fall under a federal category.
Okay.
And sometimes that even includes a shampoo manufacturer, because they'll do a shampoo for head lice, or they'll do a shampoo for dandruff, and now they're a pharmaceutical manufacturer and they have to meet those. So you have to watch that.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? You're headquartered at Metro, is that right?
Oh, we're at Metro 94, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to comment, it's nice to see all of the initiatives that this group has been working on come full circle. A lot of this has been worked on the whole time I've been here, like getting the fees so that they cover the cost was a long process that started about the time I got here 10 and a half years ago, I think. And there were some ugly increases in rates for some of the users, but to have everybody just paying for what their cost is the fairest way to do things. And I'm glad that we've got it all done now. The IPIP program too, I mean, staff works really well to work with our customers so that everybody can do what they need to do, but share equally in the costs and the benefits of what's going on. Just down the street from the Empire plant, there's a dairy that used to have to pay the high strength charge, but instead of putting it down their waste down the pipe, they're now putting it in a container so that it can be metered little by little into the flow, so you get a consistent profile of what's going down the pipe, and it's easier to treat. Those are the kind of that's kind of out of the box thinking that makes our system so successful is finding ways to reduce the burdens on our customers and make the system work as well as possible. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Wolf. I should mention that Kempstown and Empire, where that is happening, the wastes that are being removed that aren't coming to us, we are still receiving that now, but we're receiving it directly at our anaerobic digester. So we're using it to produce methane, which is a fuel that we can use to heat our plants and such. And so the problems that we were having in removing that from the wastewater are not there, but we're still getting the advantage at the end of the pipe. So we're very proud of that. Thank you.
And I love the mercury reduction. I mean, that's amazing. And the whole heavy metal reduction of 95% reduction over what
That is,
couple decades or so.
yeah, is since the program was started in 1982, Mr. Chair.
Which, as you noted, enables us to do the ash pilot on the fields right now, because if this was 1982, we're not going to be dumping that mercury or other sort of heavy metals back onto the
Exactly.
It's really cool.
Thank you.
Super cool. Yeah, please.
Yeah, I just was wondering if you could maybe go, like, what kind of metals are in the water or that you're treating with industrial? Is it both ferrous and non-ferrous metals and heavy metals? And there's
Yeah, it's Mr. Chair and council members, it's not generally ferrous metals. We're not that concerned with iron. That's actually good for us. But it is heavy metals. We have a lot of copper that comes in. We're concerned with chromium, nickel, lead obviously is a problem that can come from our industrial laundries as well as our lead smelters. We have a munition manufacturer up in Anoka that has quite a bit of lead that they have to remove from their system. Cadmium is another metal that we're interested in. We're also interested in nutrients, and we're working quite a bit to reduce phosphorus and nitrogen. Particularly, we're working a lot with the soluble non-reactive phosphorus, which we're having a hard time removing at our treatment plants. We have this biological phosphorus removal to meet our limits, but we found we're being hit by these slugs of soluble non-reactive phosphorus, and that was in a large part passing right through us. And we found that was coming from a centralized waste treater that was treating electroless nickel waste from metal finishers. And we've been working with them to find a solution so that we can still have electroless nickel plating here, but it's not going to be violating our phosphorus standards at the plants.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks again.
Well, thank
Really
you.
Appreciate it. Very informative.
Thank you.
And that takes us to our last item, General Manager's Report.
I thought I'd just briefly touch on the recent customer forum tours. I think we broke a few records or set some new records with the turnout and attendance. And I know you three were all at the Blue Lake tour. So thank you for that, because that really does help generate interest and get the word out. And gee, maybe we need to start charging, admission for these tours. But it's good to be able to share our story and have people see, firsthand what we're doing. But it's also really good for staff to get that attention and to have the opportunity to, have a little showcase of the things they do. So it's a benefit in multiple ways. And, we really appreciate that, because we think we've got a really engaged, responsible workforce culture, and we want to keep that growing strong as we go forward into the future.
Yeah, we had the mayor of Lakeville, mayor of Shakopee, council members from Hopkins and maybe Shakopee, in addition to a whole bunch of staff. So yeah, that was a huge success.
Medina was there too, big staff from Medina.
Yeah. Yep. Well done. Good job, Janine and others. The whole team. Yeah, exactly. Anything else?
That's it.
All right. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.